What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Metal Maniacs Podcast. I'm your host, Jay Ingersoll, and I'm here, as always, with my co-host, the guy that can drive you home with one headlight.
It's your boy, Modd. What's good?
What's up, buddy?
Hey. Have I done that to you? Did I make you sit in a car with one headlight?
No, but I don't know if you noticed, but I'm going to try to introduce you every single time with a different song title, so...
Great.
I just want to see how many I can come up with. So
I want a list. Yeah, because I want my spontaneous reaction every time.
I know, that's why I wanted to get that for you.
Now you have all the reasons to tune in you ever needed right there.
Just for the first 50 seconds at least.
This podcast is great for 1 minute.
Yeah, after that. But hey, give us a view. I don't care. At least give us a whole 60 seconds of your
TikTok,
time.
here we come.
Yeah. It's just the only clip every week. Just
guy gets greeted on his own show every week. Doesn't know who he is.
Has identity crisis after podcast.
Greatest show ever.
With that being said, welcome back to the Metal Maniacs Podcast, where today we are going over Sepultura Part 2.
Yes.
And if you haven't gone and listened or watched the first episode, just like all of our other episodes, listen to all of them. We appreciate it.
Yeah.
Watch all of them. But hearing the first episode of this two-part series will definitely help you get into the second one.
Yeah.
So
this is kind of like you can't pick up without watching the first one.
yeah,
huh?
exactly.
You can.
But
it's not,
we ended the last Sepultura album. We went through all the last Sepultura biography episode, the first episode of this two-part series. We ended at Roots.
Yeah.
So we just got done recording Roots, put out Roots, toured for Roots, did all that stuff. I wanted to save this part for the second episode where Max leaves Sepultura, and this is the second half of Sepultura. You could almost put it in two halves. So you have that first half, you got the second half. So on August 16th, 1996 at 1:43 a.m., Max Cavalera's stepson Dana Wells tragically died in a car crash at the age of 21 in Phoenix, Arizona. Sepultura, which was touring in England with Ozzy Osbourne to promote Roots, upon hearing the news, Ozzy and his wife Sharon Osbourne arranged for the private plane to bring Cavalera and his wife Gloria, who was also Dana's mother and the band's manager, back home. After the funeral, Max returned to Sepultura and the band continued its European tour. However, following a sold-out performance at London Brixton's Academy on December 16th, later recording on the live album Under a Pale Gray Sky, drummer Igor Cavalera, guitarist Andreas Kisser, and bassist Paulo Jr. informed Max that they wanted to replace several members of the band's staff, including Gloria. Andreas, Paulo, and Igor suggested ending Gloria's contract as Sepultura's manager and hiring someone new, arguing she paid more attention to Max than the band. They proposed she could continue as Max's personal manager, but that someone else should manage the band. Since Gloria's contract was up for renewal, she allowed the band to end it. Max felt deeply betrayed, especially by his brother Igor. Max and Gloria decided to leave Sepultura when they discovered the band had tried to rush Dana's funeral to resume touring sooner. In a May 2008 interview with Revolver magazine, Max revealed that Gloria had worked for Sepultura for 2 years without earning any money, driven solely by her passion for the music. Disagreeing with the other band members, Max declared, "If this is how it's going down, I'm out. I quit. I can't just put a mask on and backstab a bunch of people that trust me." He later described his decision as the hardest he ever had to make. Max's departure from Sepultura led to a decade-long feud between the Cavalera brothers. During this time, Max formed a new band, Soulfly, which released 9 studio albums. Igor continued as Sepultura's drummer, appearing on the next 4 studio albums before leaving in 2006 to focus on his DJ project, Michael, and to spend more time with his family. His final performance with Sepultura was at Brixton Academy in England on December 16, 1996. After Max left the band, they stayed a 3-piece for 8 months, working on new material with Kisser on vocals. In November 1997, they began searching for a new vocalist. Auditions included big names like Chuck Billy from Testament, Phil Demmel from Machine Head and Violence, Mark Grew from Morgoth, George Rosado from Murata, and then unknown Jason Gong Jones. They eventually chose Derrick Green from Cleveland, Ohio, as their new frontman. So before we get into who Derrick Green is, you had alluded to on the last episode that you said that there's two halves of Sepultura, and if you've missed out any of their music after Max, I understand people are attached to Max.
Sure.
I understand there was Max fans.
Yep.
I was one of them.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of felt weirded out by the whole transition.
Yep.
I do remember going, we'll talk about it here in a second, but the next album they put out was Against. I remember going to buy that right away because I'm like, okay, what's Sepultura up to?
Yeah.
I was on the Max bandwagon, I think just because I was so attached to a lot of those albums we talked about in the other episode. And I could have probably been one of those guys because after, and I'll tell you why, but I did put them off for a long time.
Yeah.
And then we'll talk about our evolution as Sepultura's evolution as well. But I just wanted to put that in there before we get into who Derrick Green is, because I was one of those guys that were kind of like,
yeah, it's hard to watch a band go on without their most popular vocalist or their founding member. It's a really difficult thing for a lot of fans. And end of the day, the voice of the band is the identity of the band. It's something that it is the voice of the band, and it's hard to move on from that. A new singer with a new voice is kind of like, it's a new band. You should change the band name. There's all of this rhetoric. We hear it nonstop. But, you know, the music still comes from the same source, and the voice is the same idea as Max. When you get to Derrick Green, you still have the gruff growl, the fry kind of vocal there. So, and also, in case you're new to the industry or new to music, like rebranding yourself with a new band name is starting over.
Yeah.
It's a death knell. It's like next to impossible. That Max did it was because he was Max. He was the front man. Nobody else in this band is going to jettison and form a new band and be this is successful. You'd have to be the lead singer of a band to do that.
Yeah.
So I think that when you get into the two camps of Sepultura, I understand it as well. Like there's the identity to Max. He is the band, but there are three other guys that were committing their lives to this band, and they decided to carry on with that name, and more power to them.
Including the other founding member, Max's brother. So that makes it interesting. So we'll get into who is Derrick Green. Because a lot of people, I feel like, okay, the guy that came in after Max, like no one really kind of knows who Derrick Green is. So I wanted to put like, who is Derrick Green? I wanted to emphasize this because he's a guy too, and he also spent more time in Sepultura than Max did.
Yeah,
so
at this point.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know, and they continued the legacy and continued on, you know, making good stuff. So born in Cleveland, Ohio, Derrick Green is the youngest of three children. His sister, Renee Green, is an artist, writer, and filmmaker. Green's father, Friendly, was an electrician, and his mother, Gloria, was a music teacher. When Green was 7, his family moved from the inner city Cleveland to suburban Shaker Heights, marking his first significant interaction with white people. For an early age, Green aspired to travel and live outside the United States. He spent time in Berlin before relocating to New York to Sao Paulo. Green became friends with members of thrash metal hardcore band Outfaced, formed in 1985. In 1986, at the age of 15, he joined the band after the departure of their two former singers. Outface included guitarist Charlie Carragher, later of CIV, bassist Frank Cavanaugh, later of Prong and Filter, and drummer Mark Nanapka. I'm just guessing on them. They recorded two demos, one in 1987 and the other in 1989. They were later offered a recording deal by Walter Sheriffs of Quicksand Youth Today and Gorilla Biscuits to record an album for his new sub-label of Crisis Records. The album Friendly Green, named after Green's father, was released in 1992. Their music incorporated several elements of rock, heavy metal, punk, and ska. On this release, Green was credited as Simon Verde, Spanish for Green. The band toured extensively along the East Coast and south of the United States, as well as Europe. After returning from Europe, Green and Garagria decided to move to New York City. Cavanaugh later joined the band Filter, and Anapka recorded an album with Integrity. In New York, Green and Garagria teamed up with drummer Sammy Siegler, side-by-side Youth Today judge, and bassist Eric Thrice of Orange 9mm, who was later replaced by Sarah Cox to form Overfiend. Named after the brutal Japanese animated film Legend of the Overfiend, they recorded a 3-song demo with Sharia Farrell's help, featuring a heavier direction influenced by metal and heavy rock. Their only show was opening for Sick of It All in Staten Island before Gregory and Seglier left to join and form CIV. In 1996, Green began playing guitar and singing with Sarah Cox, forming the band Alpha Jerk. They recruited drummer Luke Abbey from Warzone and Gorilla Biscuits, who was later replaced by Nick Heller from Sweet Diesel. Alpha Jerk released one self-titled album on Toy Box Records and played a few shows in the New York area, including gigs with Lunatics and Demon Speed. 2 of their songs were featured on New York's Hardest Volume 2 compilation. 1997, A&R rep Mike Gator from Roadrunner Records approached Green, suggesting he try out for Sepultura after the departure of their frontman Max Cavalera in 1996. Green received a tape with an instrumental track and recorded his idea for the song Choke, sending it to Brazil. A month later, he received a call from Sepultura's drummer Igor Cavalera inviting him to Sao Paulo to audition. Green spent 2 weeks auditioning and then was invited back to Brazil to start recording his first album with Sepultura, Against. Most of Against was written before Green joined the band. Released in 1998, the album led to the world tour. Green moved to Amsterdam during the promo tour, but later relocated to Sao Paulo to be closer to the band and work on new material. While Against was less successful than previous Sepultura albums, with fans adjusting to Max Cavalera's absence, AllMusic rated it 3 stars out of 5 and suggested the band's future remained promising. Green's significant contribution began with the album Nation, where he participated in writing process from start to finish. Sepultura's first show with Green was a private gig for a fan club members at the rehearsal space in Brazil in February 1988. The first public show under the name Troops of Doom was July 8th in 1998 at the House of Blues of Los Angeles, supported by Human Waste Project, Toro Santana, and Spineshank.
So there's your temporary name change for you.
Yep. So, however, the album Against, it didn't do so well critically or commercially as their previous albums and sold fewer copies than the debut album of Max Cavalera's new band, Soulfly. In a retrospective review, AllMusic Against 3 out of 5 stars, noting that there are enough flashes of the old Sepultura brilliance to suggest that great things are still to come. Like Roots, Against featured various guest musician and tribal influences, including Japanese percussion with the help of Takio group Kodo. The songs Against, Choke, and Tribus were released as singles, with Choke getting a music video that featured footage from the Barulho Canta Fome, Noise Against Hunger concert, the first gig of the Against tour. This concert, including guest appearances from Zavante Tribe, Mike Patton, Jason Newsted, Carlene Host Brown, original Sepultura guitarist Mario Guedes, and Coffin Joe, whose Blessing of the band appeared as a B-side entitled Pronuncio on the Tribus EP. So before we get into a little bit more of this, I'm just going to tell you my thoughts on Against. So, this isn't a bad album.
Okay.
It is really middle of the road for me.
Yeah.
I feel like Sepultura at this time almost had an identity crisis for these few albums. Like I feel like they were trying to accomplish something, but it didn't quite get there with the new singer.
Yeah.
I feel like they were trying to distinguish themselves past the Max Cavalera era. Like, where do we go from Roots with such a huge success?
Yeah.
And of course, there was a lot of that fallout of people were like, oh, Max isn't in the band anymore. I don't want to hear it because I don't even want to give it a chance.
Right.
Derrick Green's vocals on this, a lot of fried vocals, but he did add some new clean elements that I thought were interesting. Like, he had an actual clean, like lower, more almost operatic type voice on this. But it was a pick-off from where Roots left off, but I just feel like these few albums I'm going to mention in here, there was kind of an identity crisis where they didn't really know what exactly they were going to do with their music. So I go ahead, buddy.
I was going to say, I felt like they were continuing to rewrite Roots. I just felt like they were kind of stuck in that, like they almost backed themselves into a corner with Roots where we can't really outdo or top this, so we're just going to kind of continue it. And so to me, I mean, and I'll take the heat for this one. I haven't listened to those albums like I should have, but I will let you speak to them more. What I did hear along the way just kind of sounded like cutting room scraps from Roots. Like, I don't mean to be too brutal about it, but it just felt like they just continued with writing Roots style music until they finally maybe circled back around, even after a couple of albums with Derrick Green, to some of the older sound or a newer sound for Sepultura. And they still do a good job currently of retaining the cultural influence, but I felt like they were kind of they kind of backed themselves into a corner, as I stated, and they were kind of recycling some of their writing a little bit, and maybe it was hard to move forward without Max too.
I also felt like some of these, like, even if you listen to some of the guitar riffs, I know you're trying to have the influence for some of the other musicians and instruments in the music, so maybe you're letting the guitar breathe a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But we are, a lot of it is gone away from riffs. Like, there's just some noisy one chord weird stuff going on where there's other shit involved. And I don't know, these 3 albums I'm going to talk about, I listened to all of the Sepultura, so don't fucking sue me. But these albums just didn't do anything for me. They were just almost kind of like, they had their points where, like, okay, this is a cool riff or a cool section of the song.
Yeah.
But it was almost painstaking at some points where it was like, just kind of run of the mill, whatever.
Yeah.
You know, there wasn't a cool guitar riff. There wasn't a cool drum beat to hang on to. It was just like, we're writing songs now to write songs. We're trying to find our way. And that's okay with a band with this extensive catalog and being this successful at such an early time in their lives, and how they rose to fame almost, you could say, like, instantly.
Yeah.
Like, this is going to be a weird time in your band. You know?
I think it's also a matter of been there, done that. They've done the thrash metal thing for so long, and with Roots being a really good blend of the cultural music and thrash metal, well, heavy metal.
Yeah,
anyway.
heavy metal. Yeah.
I think they kind of wanted, it seems like, in hindsight, they wanted to just kind of move more musically in whatever creative direction they were feeling at the time, and not be tied down or attached to even heavy metal, as it were. But they also were still Sepultura, the band, the brand, what they were known for. And so I think it was easiest for them to move forward with, like, their cultural influence and then just kind of write songs tailored to that from their respective instruments. But they gutted it out. They survived. It took them some time, but...
And like we always say on this show, music at this time in 1998, 1999 it was in a weird spot. You didn't quite get what I always say is the Slipknot effect, right? Like, because that was 99, almost 2000 right there.
Yeah, really started to
But
take
you didn't
effects.
really get, like, we're really in this new metal wash of what is going on. So you're trying to put out something that's a little heavier than probably Roots guitar-wise, I should say, like instrument-wise, not as jammy as some of the stuff in Roots. But, music was just at a weird time in 1998 anyway. So you're also going against, like, what's popular, and the last thing people at this time probably was thinking about a new Sepultura record when there was other things that they could be paying attention to.
Yeah, there was a lot of new music happening at that time. No pun intended.
So the flute section in Kamatachi, performed by Kodo, is heavily based on The Hunted from the Kodo's Ibuki album, originally composed for the movie of the same name. The Waste, a vocal version of Kamatachi, featured Mike Patton, was featured in the movie Freddy vs. Jason, and it's a soundtrack. The band also supported Metallica during their May 1999 tour in Brazil. Damn.
So, they weren't really hurting for shows if they're opening for Metallica in 99.
Metallica was on kind of a weird fucking spot in 1999 too, because that was that Load or Reload probably at that time.
Probably
like
Reload. But
kicking that, right? So,
but still, like, Metallica being Metallica, if you're opening for them, you're definitely doing well for
still
yourselves.
Metallica either way.
Bigger than ever.
Yeah. So songs like Choke, Boycott, and the title track from Against were still being played live during the Machine Messiah era, 2017 through 2018. In 2019, Derrick Green reflected on the album saying, "I feel so proud and happy about it because it has affected so many people that I didn't realize back then. At the time, people were just getting into the changes of the band, but now so many have great stories from the first time hearing this album. It's great to see the evolution and how excited people get when we play these songs. It's such an important album for keeping the band together." Fair. Despite its significance, Against was a commercial disappointment compared to Roots, selling only 18,000 copies in its first week in the U.S. It has since sold over 130,000 copies in the United States. AllMusic gave the album 3 out of 5 stars, noting there are enough flash. Okay, I already had that part in there. So, moving on. Nation. It's the 8th studio album by Sepultura, released in 2001 through Roadrunner Records. It features guest appearances from artists like Jimmy Josta from Hatebreed, Dead Kennedys' Yellow Biafra, El Niño's Christian Machado, and Ratos de Porias, Oyo Gordo, and Apocalyptica.
Okay.
Apocalyptica.
Yeah, I love that band.
I like some El Niño, too. One of their fucking albums rules, too.
Yeah.
So, according to the official site, a video for One Man Army was supposed to be filmed at the end of August 2001, but it never happened due to lack of support from Roadrunner Records. Sepultura blamed Roadrunner for not promoting the album enough and left the label for SPV in 2002. Nation received better reviews than Against, but sold fewer copies. As of April 2002, it had sold over 55,000 copies in the U.S. and went gold in Brazil. Q Magazine gave it 3 out of 5 stars, calling it a collection of crowd-pleasingly brutal anthems that return to a more exploratory approach. Alternative Press rated it 4 out of 5, highlighting Derrick Green's improved vocals and the album's router emotional resonance. NME gave it 6 out of 10, noting its fierce political stance and directness. Nation sales were disappointing compared to the previous 3 albums, making their last studio release with Roadrunner. AllMusic gave the album 3 out of 5 stars, noting that Derrick Green's vocals conveyed more than just one nation's supple nation. He was suggesting something larger and worth fighting for. Derrick Green mentioned in an interview that each song related to the idea of building a nation, with their own flags and anthem. Roadrunner Records released a recording of Max Cavalera's last live show with Sepultura titled Under a Pale Gray Sky in 2002.
So it feels like because of the dwindling sales numbers, the label decided to get a little bit more, milk the cow, and release something with Max's name attached to it to supplement the lack of sales from what they were getting out of, Nation and Against. So
during this time, too, you got to remember, not only has music taken a weird change right now, we're entering the internet era, too. Yeah, so we're starting to creep into maybe not as many CD sales. I mean, we're not quite there yet.
Yeah, I don't know if we're to Napster or LimeWire just yet.
Yeah, we're not that far yet, but we are creeping up on it soon. So, as far as my just a take on Nation, I felt they came back with some better riffs and some better songwriting than Against. I felt like maybe Derrick Green's involvement in him, being able to write the album fully, they were able to write a new hard rock heavy metal album. There was less influences on this as far as some of the different instruments and everything like that. Okay. So I think this is where we start steering back towards more guitaring, or more guitar playing, more drumming, more instrumentation, where we're not having so many open chords. Where I do remember this album in particular that there was a lot more riffs that I enjoyed on this from the guitar playing standpoint than I did with Against.
Okay. And a real quick Google search tells me that Napster was actually founded in 99, so we're definitely in the Napster era here if we're like 3 years into it. Yeah. So that would reflect a drop in album sales as people are realizing they can just download music for free.
So that was 1990, or that was 2002 right there where we left off. And then so they released an EP of covers, Revolute songs in 2002. I listened to it. I didn't really care for it because a lot of it was punk and early kind of thrash influence stuff. Yeah. Nothing really grabbed me. I didn't really know what it was until I listened to it, and I was like, oh, these are all cover songs. But I listened to the whole thing just because. But in 2002, the band dropped their 9th studio album, Roarback, in 2003. Oh, I'm sorry. After releasing an EP of covers, Revolute songs, in 2002, the band dropped their 9th studio album, Roarback, in 2003 through SPV Records. Despite critical acclaim, sales remained low. AllMusic gave it 4 out of 5 stars, praising Green's passionate performance and strong writing. In 2005, Sepultura played at the Dubai Desert Rock Festival and released a live double DVD CD package, Live in Sao Paulo, their first official live album. The songs Mind War and Bullet Blue Sky were released as singles and accompanying music videos. The DJ Pack version released everywhere except the U.S., including the Revolute Songs EP and the video for Bullet and Blue Sky. Despite positive reviews, sales were down from previous albums with Green on vocals. Roarback peaked at number 17 on Billboard's independent music chart, selling 4,000 copies in its first week. As of March 2007, it had sold over 75,000 units in the U.S. AllMusic's Alex Henderson gave it 4 out of 5 stars, commenting on the album's themes of unrest and political corruption. Pop Matters called it their strongest effort in years. So I feel like just a few notes on Roarback. I almost feel like this is Nation Part 2 for me.
Okay.
I just felt like specifically these 3 albums kind of fell all in the same theme where, Against was kind of coming out of Roots, but we're still keeping some of that new metalish, weird guitar, not necessary sounds sometimes. Nation, we're starting to get a little more riffy, and I feel like Roarback, we're really starting to come back to turning this Sepultura machine around where we're finding identity now.
Okay.
We're finding what we want to do. Derrick's now been in the band for 3-album cycle or, 2 full albums, and then Against he recorded vocals on.
Yeah.
So now we're getting used to each other as musicians on tours and all of that. So Roarback, not a bad effort at all.
Okay.
Still kind of middle of the road for me, but still a pretty good record. That one's definitely worth checking out.
Okay.
So
yeah, I mean, I know they did some good things along the way. I just feel like I wasn't really attached to Sepultura in any capacity at this point. I think having played out Roots so much and kind of pigeonholing them myself into that Roots category, like, oh, we're just doing tribal metal now for the rest of our lives, and I've kind of got enough of that with Roots. I myself was one of those guys that just didn't give Sepultura the time of day too much after the fact. So I knew they were doing some things. Some of it was pretty good or decent, but I was on to other things, like myself personally. I don't stick around too long in a fan base because for me, it's not even about a band or the identity of the band. I just move from like album to album, and if I like it, cool, I'm still with you. If I don't really like it, I won't become a hater. I just kind of move on to whatever else I gravitate towards. So yeah, I was definitely tuned out at this point, but I didn't hate. I just was detached.
That's a good way to put it. I kind of was too. And, there's a lot of new bands, internet's emerging. Yeah. There's a lot of things coming out. I remember us really liking Slipknot and getting back out of the new metal shit into the heavier stuff at this time. So now we're talking about...
Where are we at here? 2003, 4. So now we're talking like early Lamb of God. We're talking all that remains. Kill Switch.
So now this New England wave of metalcore stuff's kind of coming through, including the Slipknot. Right around Iowa, after Iowa briefly, so. But, so moving on here. On March 14th, 2006, Sepultura released Dante, is that 21?
Yeah.
Based on Dante Alighieri's. How would you say that? I should get that right because it's based on...
Alighieri's?
Yeah. But it's the Divine Comedy.
Oh, yeah, Dante's Inferno.
Yeah, Dante's Inferno. It was the last album to feature Igor Cavalera on drums. AllMusic gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars, calling it one of Sepultura's strongest releases with Green on vocals. At this time, this is where I'm like, okay,
all right,
there's some shit going on this album. Like
nice.
This was one of the ones where I was like, okay, Dante's we're starting to get back to some riffs and some grooves and some good shit I can grasp onto.
Okay.
So this was an album if I had to say in a harsh way, I could go without Against, I could go without Roarback, and I could go without Nation.
Right.
But if you get back into it and you start here, you're safe. Because here moving forward, we see an evolution in Sepultura that even I didn't see coming until I came back and revisited these albums with a different open mind. So, originally titled Dante 05, the name changed when the album wasn't released by the end of 2005. The first single, Convicted in Life, won the MTV VMB Best Editing in a Video Award in 2006.
Nice.
The artwork was done by Steven Doishinoff, featuring 10 paintings based on the Divine Comedy.
I like the artwork for this too. It's unique.
It's pretty sweet.
Yeah. It doesn't stream to me like a harsh metal album, like the look of it, but I do like the look of it. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I like it too. Covers of Judas Priest, Screaming for Vengeance, and Sick of It All, Scratch the Surface have been recorded as B-sides. Screaming for Vengeance was included as a Japanese bonus track, while Scratch the Surface appeared on Sick of It All's tribute album. Our Impact Will Be Felt, the Brazilian edition released by Croco Records, features 2 bonus tracks. Mind War, recorded live from Stanley Sora's mixing desk in Erfurt, Germany on December 3rd, 2004 during a tour with Motorhead, and False, a demo recording at High Five Studio in Sao Paulo during the pre-production for Dante 21 in July 2005. Many critics considered it the best album of Derrick Green era for Sepultura. Jad Bauer from About.com praised the album for its intensity and noted that it brings the thrash at full blast, highlighting Green's vocal performance and the album's overall concept. Steve Huey from AllMusic remarked that the elements that made Sepultura stand out in the metal scene were still present and considered this one of the band's strongest releases with Green on vocals. So we see the common theme here, even kind of what I said.
Yeah.
We're starting to get back to these guys that, okay, this is the Sepultura that I remember.
Yep.
You know, we're almost creeping back to like even before Chaos AD, you know, because we're bringing back the thrash, we're bringing back the punk rock. We're starting to realize that, and let me just say this. For as many times as I said it on this fucking on this podcast, there still could be the Slipknot effect right here.
Yeah.
Because we're all starting to get heavy again. We're starting to get back to the stuff that we originally came from. We kind of, we all had that little new metal blip, even though they had one of the most successful new metal albums, probably, if you want to call it new metal, like we talked about on the last episode. But if you call it that, it's probably one of the most successful new metal albums, you know, as far as bands of this caliber, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Of this legendary caliber.
Probably one of the better efforts, too.
Yeah. So Phil Freeman from Alternative Press stated that with the album, Sepultura is finally back at full strength, delivering exactly what the listener hopes to get from the pioneers in the art of skull crushing. However, in a mixed review for Stylus magazine, Cosmo Lee found the riffs unmemorable and felt the songs lacked tension in release. He also criticized the album's artwork, describing it as having a weak, mild-mannered font worthy of indie rock. I mean, everything's subjective. It's all, even our opinions on the show. It's just an opinion, right? So it's really what you think of it. It's the same thing as movies. You may think one movie sucks. The next guy thinks it sucks. Somebody might be their favorite movie. So that's the beautiful thing about art. We just said we like the art because it was something a little different.
Yeah.
This guy says that the font was indie rock. Okay, whatever.
Yeah.
You want to be that meticulous and picky about shit. Okay, whatever.
So I'll tell you, just looking at it, it's not dark. It's not black, and it's not skeletons and demons or any of this nature. So it looks different from anything they've done before. It does remind me of one of my favorite video games, Darkest Dungeon. It has a particular art style to it that I appreciate, and you know, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I'm not a big fan of the color, but I like it. It stands out, and they seem to have a different logo, and I don't think there's anything wrong with it at all. I don't think it looks bad. I mean, but everybody's a critic, right?
Right, exactly. I guess especially if you're writing for a magazine to be a critic, so whatever. Yeah. But despite positive reviews, Dante 21's sales were disappointing, selling only 2,300 copies in its first week in the U.S. However, it sold over 120,000 copies worldwide, and it went gold in Brazil and Cyprus. Literature and popular culture scholar Matthew Tuch called it a modern-day soundtrack for Dante's Divine Comedy. In 2007 interview with Revolver, Max Cavalera hinted at a reunion with the original lineup, which didn't happen. Igor Cavalera left the band after Dante 21's release, replaced by Gene Dallabella. Igor and Max later formed the Cavalera Conspiracy, and well, that was just kind of a side note. So this is what Igor said about his leaving Sepultura, because this is important. I believe my mission in Sepultura has come to an end, Igor said in the statement. I'm very proud of everything we have done, but I feel that the group's current formation no longer lives up to my expectations as a musician and a person. Since my last tour with Sepultura, which took place in Europe in December 2004, I have sensed that my ideas were not compatible with those of the rest of the band. Igor, who hasn't toured with Sepultura since 2005, noticed that his personal ambitions were worlds apart from the other members of the group, and he felt slightly detached from the creative process of Sepultura. After working in a band for so many years, the relationship between me and the rest of the group wore itself out, and I feel there's no longer a compatibility of thoughts and ideas between us, he said. I tried to make this clear to the other guys and suggested that we take a break. However, the priority was to continue playing despite my absence.
Yeah, when you're in a band, I don't think anybody can afford to take a break. Like, one guy wanting to take a break is one thing. We're going to have to move on without you, either temporarily or permanently. But at no point in any band can many bands afford to collectively take the break.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely at a crossroads here. Maybe Igor wanted to continue with a certain sound, and they were like, no, we're moving in a new direction. Kind of hard. Just based on what he said, it sounded like, creatively speaking, they were at different points in their lives.
Yeah.
And yeah, just I get that you want to take a break, but it's not going to happen. Like, we have to continue to make a living.
Right. So as a drumming musician, Igor will carry on and says he is looking forward to incorporating new sounds and influences, such as hip-hop, hardcore, tribal percussion, and electronic music, into his future projects to produce something authentic and real, similar to what Sepultura once represented in his life.
Mm.
Sepultura was a featured musical guest in 2008 Latin Grammy Awards, performing The Girl from Ipanema and We've Lost You from Alex. They also appeared in a successful Volkswagen commercial in Brazil playing Bossa Nova. So their 11th studio album, Alex, was released in January 23rd, 2009 by SPV. This was their second concept album based on Anthony Burgess, A Clockwork Orange. Recorded in Sao Paulo, it received positive reviews. AllMusic gave it 4 out of 5 stars, calling it a vicious, loud sledgehammer of an album. It sold 5,000 copies in Brazil and 1,600 in the U.S. during its first week. The Brazilian edition of Rolling Stone ranked it among the top 25 Brazilian albums of 2012. Excuse me. I don't have the art for this one up there, but I'll just say Alex, to me, fucking banger, dude.
Oh,
it is a banger.
Nice.
It is, like, I remember listening to this and I was like, okay. I said what I said about the other albums, but front to back, starting here,
okay,
going forward in Sepultura, it's all worth jamming. It's all worth listening to, but Alex is a banger.
Looking at the artwork now, fucking awesome.
Yeah, I know it's the only one I didn't put in the actual for us to reference, but man, super badass.
Yeah, and this too, so now I'm looking at this and, like, you know, compared to the Dante 2021 there, like, now we're going back to a black backdrop and some very vicious looking, evil looking, reminiscent of a Rise,
fucking
conglomeration of things.
Yep.
Yeah, it looks pretty sick. Now we're talking, like, if I see this, I'm like, oh, Sepultura's back. Like, I would tend to agree in hindsight with the initial review of the previous artwork, saying, like, that doesn't look like a metal album on Dante 21, even if it sounds like it.
Right.
And then you look at this and you're like, oh, that's got to be a metal album. Like, that's a hell of an effort right there. It's got to be reflected in the music, right? So good to hear that that's a jammer.
It is. It's great, dude.
I'm definitely going to go back and listen to some of these, just like create a whole Sepultura playlist. And
I would start here.
Yeah.
You're safe to start here. I mean, you could probably jam the Dantes too if you want some extra stuff to jam. But this Alex record, I just remember, like, listening to it and I was like, holy fuck, man! Like, this is good.
Nice.
And that was from, you know, the other ones. Just from a personal taste, to me, they were lackluster, right?
Yeah.
They were just kind of like run of the mill. But this is where fucking Sepultura storms back, and we're like, okay, we're metal as fuck now.
Yeah, again.
Yeah. So let's see, where was I at?
Andreas Kisser.
Yep. I'm going to delete this real quick. So guitarist Andreas Kisser contributed a recipe for churrasco and soy sauce to Hellbent for Cooking, the heavy metal cookbook.
Nice.
Damn, boy, you better put that on note and get that for you.
It's on order right now.
The heavy metal cookbook. That's cool as shit, dude.
Where cooking and music collide, especially metal. I'm there. I'm there for it all day.
So Sepultura supported Metallica in January 2010 at Morambu Stadium in Sao Paulo. They filmed a concert DVD in 2010 and played at various festivals, including the Heavy Music Festival in the UK. Alex is a second concept by Sepultura, album by Sepultura. Hold up. My bad. I'm going to cut that out.
Yeah, you said this one was based on A Clockwork Orange, correct?
Yep, we already got that. And that was the same film that was adapted by, I think that's why I left that in there.
I have, like, mixed feelings, like, on doing original music based on art that's already been done. Like if I come to you and I say, hey, I want to do an album, but I want it to be all Lord of the Rings lyrical content, or all Star Wars, or all Harry Potter. I have like, if I'm a fan of that, I might gravitate toward it and check it out. But I feel like you kind of lose me a little bit just in that department. I mean, I understand you can write the lyrics metaphorically and use that content and say, I want to write about this, but I want it to be in the world of Lord of the Rings. You know, I think for me that's, I don't know, I you know, because there's bands that do it. We've had them on the show,
right?
And it's, you know, I'm not knocking it. It's fair game, but also I feel like you're not even writing your own fantasy. Now you're kind of writing somebody else's fantasy in your own music, and you're just. It's fair if that's what you're left with, like to focus on your music, and then just kind of say, all right, we're going to take the content of the lyrics from this world, and that's what my heart is in right now, and that's fine. But I just feel like I would rather write from my own artistic, creative origins there. But
so the album was recorded at Trauma Studios in Sao Paulo with producer Stanley Soares and mixed at Mega Studios throughout 2008. From February's composition process to the completion of mixing in August, the band revealed the track listing and the album title shortly thereafter. Guitarist Andreas Kisser explained the influences from Burgess' work, stating, "We will write our soundtrack for this story, and Burgess' life will be an inspiration also to write the music, lyrics, and for the artwork." The title, A-Lex, is a pun on the main character from the novel, Alex, and the Latin phrase a, which equals without, plus lex equals law, referring to Alex and his companion's lawless behavior. Alex was released in 3 versions: a deluxe digipack with an embossed cover, a regular jewel case, and a vinyl gatefold LP. January 16, 2009, the album was made available for exclusive listening on Last FM.
I would like that embossed. I think that's awesome. Anytime something is embossed with like a textured cover, I'm like, that's the next level for a CD collector like me. I'm like, oh, let me get that embossed slip. I got a little touchy feely texture on it.
Just doing this with your nails, just click, 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 click. I like it.
Fun.
The album received positive reviews. New drummer Gene Dolabella. New drummer Gene Dolabella was well received by both fans and media. AllMusic awarded Alex 4 out of 5 stars, calling it a vicious, loud sledgehammer of an album. Alternative Press rated it 3.5 out of 5 stars, praising the album for fusing the band's various stylistic phrases from thrash and death metal to punk, hardcore groove metal, and even tribal rhythms. Record Collector gave it 3 out of 5 stars, noting its closer resemblance to a live hardcore punk sound compared to refined digital crunch of their previous records. The Brazilian edition of Rolling Stone listed Alex among the top 25 Brazilian albums of 2012. Alex sold 5,000 copies in its first week of release in Brazil and 1,600 copies in the first week in the United States. AllMusic highlighted the band's resilience, stating, "Personal changes can have a very negative effect on a band, but Sepultura have maintained their vitality all these years, and that vitality is alive and well on a superb Alex."
I think you just covered some of this already right here.
Yeah.
This next part.
I got it.
Yeah. So I think we're moving on to the next album after that.
We got all that already.
Yeah.
Try to give us a good proofread, but a couple things I missed. So we're moving on to 2010, July 6, 2010. Sepultura announced they signed with Nuclear Blast Records and would be releasing their first album with the label in 2011. Despite rumors, there would be no reunion of the classic lineup. Fucking every year with this reunion of the classic lineup for these guys, I swear.
Yeah.
By the end of 2010, the band started writing new material and entered the studio to record their 12th album with producer Roy Z, known for working with Judas Priest, Halford, Iron Maiden's Bruce Dickinson, and Halloween. Recording sessions for the album titled Kairos took place from December 2010 to March 2011 at Trauma Studios in Sao Paulo, the same studio where their 2009 album Alex was recorded. By March 1st, 2011, Sepultura had completed recording Kairos, and announced the album title on March 4th. Guitarist Kisser explained that the album's theme revolved around the concept of time, particularly significant moments that shape our lives. Kisser said, "It's like an instant in time, a special time of change. Everyone's life is written by their choices. You have many kairos, moments." The concept reflected Sepultura's 26-year history and the changes within and around the band. Kairos received positive feedback from the critics and fans. It sold over 2,500 copies in its first week in the United States and topped the CMJ Loud Rock chart for 3 weeks. The album also charted in Germany, Australia, and Switzerland. The band toured Europe, the US, Canada, and Brazil on the Kairos World Tour. The song Mask even appeared as a downloadable content in 2012 video game Twisted Metal. This album includes covers of Ministry's Just One Fix and Prodigy's Firestarter, available as bonus tracks on the special edition releases. Sepultura performed on the Kairos World Tour at the end of Wacken Open Air in 2011. Kairos was the last album recorded with Gene Dolabella, who left 5 months after its release, and he said, in the context that they show me, it wasn't only about being away from home and family. I had problems with the manager. It wasn't positive. I was raising a flag that wasn't mine, you know. I started playing with them after they've been together for 20 years. I took over for someone. There are other sides, other stuff that wasn't told in the documentary, and it's the band's story, not mine. In this moment, I'm going through it, but with my new band, Ego Kill Talent. It's different dealing with it, your family with your family by your side and something that was created by you. It's all new and different from what I was going on in that moment. No hard feeling. I think it's supposed to say feelings, but this is a quote. No hard feelings. There was no fight. That's it. And if today we sing in English, if we want to tour Europe and the United States, I know I'll have all those people close to me and I'll be able to take a breath. Not even real sure what the fuck that meant, bro. So
it just sounds like he was done with the band at that time, or they had grown apart.
Yeah.
Again, maybe musical differences too. Yeah, it sounds like he was being very vague in that statement because he didn't want to step on anybody else's toes, what had already been told and said, and didn't want to contradict anybody.
I just meant those last few lines. I wasn't exactly sure what the hell he was trying to say with that, but whatever, it's a quote, so I guess he said it. So he was replaced by Eloy Casagrande in November 2011. Casagrande, only 20 at the time, had previously played with Brazilian heavy metal singer Andre Matos and the post-hardcore band Gloria. In late 2011, Sepultura participated in the Thrash Fest Classics tour along Exodus, Destruction, Heathen, and Mortal Sin. In May 2012, guitarist Andreas Kisser told Metal Underground that Sepultura would start working on new material with Eloy and aim to release it early in the next year. At England's Bloodstock Open Air on August 10, 2012, Kisser revealed that Sepultura would be filming a live DVD with the French percussive group Los Tambouros du Bronx. It's probably not how you say that, but get over it. He also mentioned that the band was brainstorming ideas for their next album, aiming for a 2013 release.
Les Tam du Bronx.
There you go. I know you were practicing your French for the last, when we talked about Gojira one time, so.
I need to learn some French. It's fun.
On December 10th, 2012, producer Ross Robinson, who produced Roots, tweeted about producing the band's next album, which was later confirmed. Steve Evans would co-produce the album, and former Slayer drummer Dave Lombardo made a guest appearance. On January 25th, 2013, author Jason Korolenko announced he was working on Relentless, 30 Years of Sepultura, the only biography covering the band's entire 30-year career. The book was published in Poland on October 8, 2014 under the title, whatever the fuck that is. I'll leave that.
Brasilinska Furia.
Okay, thank you. With the English edition released on December 4th, 2014. On July 19, 2013, Sepultura announced that their title for their 13th album, The Mediator Between Head and Hands Must Be the Heart. The album was released on October 25th, 2013 in Europe, and on October 29, 2013 in the United States via Nuclear Blast. Inspired by the 1927 science fiction film Metropolis, the album's title is a quote from the film. This album marks the debut drummer of Eloy Casagrande and the first album recorded in the United States since 1998 1998's Against. Ross Robinson, who produced the band's 96 album Roots, returned as producer for this project. So even though he said he was going to produce it, he actually did. Because it was just a tweet, and then it actually came to fruition. So April 2013, Sepultura had developed 13 songs. Guitarist Kisser expressed enthusiasm about the album's progress, noting the fresh energy brought by Casagrande. Vocalist Derrick Green mentioned in May that most of the music had been written and they were working on lyrics with plans to complete everything before entering the studio on June 1st. June 10th, the band reported that they recorded 6 songs, progressing at a rate of 2 songs per day. Later that month, it was announced that Dave Lombardo would make a guest appearance on the album. Kisser explained that Lombardo's participation added a special element to one of the songs. July 12th, recording was complete and the album title was revealed a week later. Green described the album sound as a really sinister, dark, and metal as hell, while Kisser characterized it as brutal, fast, and straight to the point. They praised Casagrande's contribution, with Green highlighting the new energy he brought to the music. So before I kind of move on for the rest of this, like, in my mind, that's what it screamed to me.
Yeah.
Because like I said, Dante's was pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Alex was great.
Yep.
And then you get into this album, and it's just a banger. It's one of their better albums.
Mm-hmm. No, how did you feel about Kairos preceding it?
Oh, I guess I didn't really say about that. I thought that it kind of left off where Alex left off. Like, it was very around the same vein. Like, their thrash elements came back, a lot of double bass, a lot of more high-energy punk type stuff throughout it, a lot more riffs. There was still some groove in there, but I felt like they were trying to go back to, you almost said before, like their roots during that. Like, we were a thrash band before, so those albums had a lot more thrash and punk elements on it, more Ducka Duckas back.
So was the introduction of Eloy into Sepultura really prevalent to you? Like, you could notice the difference in the drum work or the aggression or any obvious difference from Kairos to the mediator between head and hands must be the heart?
Me personally, I felt like everything was tighter. Like, everything was just wrapped tighter. The riffs interlocked with the drums a lot on a rhythmic level, a lot better than they did previously.
Right.
Maybe not in the early days, but over the last few albums. I felt like this inspired Kisser to a whole new level, because he's like, at this time, I don't know how old he is, you guys do the math, but you got this young 20-year-old kid that's just full of piss and vinegar, and he's a badass drummer anyway, hits hard as hell, and he can obviously play Sepultura music, so he's like, shit, maybe I have to step up my game, and I felt like that's where this album comes in right there. Kisser explained that the album was inspired by the phrase from Metropolis, the mediator between the head and heart, or head and hands must be the heart, reflecting the themes explored in the lyrics. Although inspired by the film, the album is not a concept album like their previous works, Dante, 21, and Alex. Kisser elaborated on the album's themes, noting that the contrast between the film's portrayal of a robot transforming into a human and today's increasing robotization through technology and globalized society. The phrase emphasizes the importance of the human heart and freedom of choice. Roy Van Horn Jr. of blabbermouth.net rated the album 8 out of 10 stars, suggesting that most listeners would be pleased with the results. Matt Heineck from About.com described The Mediator as possibly Sepultura's best album since Chaos AD and gave it 4 out of 5 stars. The album sold over 1,800 copies in its first week in the release of the United States. On September 2013, Sepultura performed at Rock in Rio with Brazilian rock MPB artist Zé Ramalho, creating a unique collaboration called Sepultura, a preamble of both artists' names. So, damn good album.
Yeah.
Worth any listen you can give it. I mean, we got the old logo back. I mean, we kind of got that back on Alex, but, you know, you're rocking the old logo. You're rocking some dark artwork, you know, or some thought. This is dark but thoughtful at the same time.
Right.
And, this album is just full of piss and vinegar, and I just really liked it a lot myself.
Also got, and it can't be overstated, one of the best drummers in the game. One of the hardest hitters, and the music seems to be kind of centering around having that youthful energy and vibrance back in the band. And yeah, the rest of the band getting on in age a little bit, but when you got a kid that's like that great at their craft, like so young, I think it's it literally breathes new life into what they're doing. He just probably fills the room with like youthful exuberance, just like, let's go fam, like I'm ready, let's get it. I want to be top of the world. And I'm sure maybe at some point by the end of this episode we'll touch on him being at the top of the world now.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think this is where a lot of Max fans are missing out if they haven't listened to the stuff that Eloy was on. And previous stuff leading up to it, like they seem to be kind of riding the ship more toward metal at this point.
Yep, for sure.
But once you got Eloy on the throne, you've got some really good Sepultura that you need to check out. Guy's just a master at his craft.
And like I said, inspired some really cool riffs, probably with some of the stuff he was throwing under them, or and sometimes it takes a little new blood or new ideas. You can get very stagnant, especially after this many years. And the nice thing for him, like you said, he was young, but getting into a band like Sepultura that's already established, they don't have a problem getting shows or playing with Metallica or playing these Rock in Rio Fest that have 10 to 30,000 people at them or whatever. It's he didn't have to, not saying he didn't have to do a lot. He had to do his job and do it well and be willing to do that. But like a lot of that path, when you're 20, you're worrying about, can I get signed? Can I get into a studio? Can I get on stage? All that stuff was kind of taken care of if you join Sepultura, because you're going to be on a stage.
Yep.
Just show up and fucking do well. That's the problem, So
do your part.
So after more than 2 years of touring for The Mediator Between Head and Hands Must Be the Heart, Sepultura hit the studio mid-2016 to start recording their 14th studio album. This time, they teamed up with producer Jens Bogren.
Mm-hmm.
Machine Messiah, released on January 13th, 2017, sold 1,900 units in its first week in the U.S. This album marked the band's longest gap between studio albums, over 3 years since The Mediator Between Head and Hands Must Be the Heart. Filipino artist Camille de la Raza created the album cover art. So before we get into this, man, right here, one of my favorite Sepultura records.
Nice. Good to hear that.
One of my favorite Sepultura records. What a goddamn beast of a record. The opening is so melodic. It comes in, you're like, wow, this is a whole new level of Sepultura. Like this album right here is beyond, I think, creatively, even some of the stuff that they were trying to do back in the day. I'm not taking anything away from those albums because it was a time. We have different technology now.
Yep.
We have different ways to record.
Yeah.
Not only is Jens one of the best producers in the game right now and has produced everybody that's great and continues to do so. So it also helped that you have this fucking amazing producer on here. The songs are just great. They're heavy. Phantom Self, super banger. Resistance Parasites is a banger. So many cool rhythmic riffs in here that go tight with the kick drums, giving me new grooves that I haven't heard you play before. Great guitar work. Like, I don't know what happened. I don't know if you got lessons. I don't know if you got inspired. But if you put this guitar work up against and I didn't know what I know, I wouldn't even consider it the same band.
Right.
Like, I really wouldn't. I'd be like, what the fuck is what is this band? What is this? It's two different bands to me. But I love this record. And the artwork is cool as fuck, too.
Oh, yeah. Colorful, but also mean at the same time. Really cool. Busy work. Busy cover. Machine Messiah.
So,
Sepultura?
let's see.
No.
Nope. Machine Messiah got positive reviews, with critics calling it one of Sepultura's best. Thom Zurich from AllMusic gave it 3.5 stars, noting how it continues to build on the diverse elements of their previous albums while re-engaging with the thrash and hardcore that made The Mediator so compelling. He described it as an ambitious, angry, hungry outing, praising the band's creativity and diverse sound palette. I think it's more than that. It's an ambitious, angry, and hungry. It's ambitious, angry, hungry outing. But there is so much melody on here. Like, they've always had melody, but somehow they've taken the melody to a whole new level with memorable melodies and just great guitar work. New Noise gave the album a perfect 5 stars, calling it one of 2017's most noticeable records.
Awesome.
They praised Green's vocals and lyrics along with the instrumentals, which they said showcased incredible musicianship. Loudwire highlighted Andres Kisser's skillful guitar work, whether at maximum velocity or exploring progressive territory. First Post commented Green's versatile vocals and no clean singing highlighted Eloy Casagrande's phenomenal drumming. And I will say this, like Derrick Green's vocals did actually grow as well with the band.
Okay.
He, like I said, alluded to previously, maybe in the other episode, he's always had the fry vocal, but he's always brought in this kind of like clean singing too.
Yeah.
And it's always the fries, even Max's and Derrick's, they've been an audible fry.
Yeah.
They're not like so disgusting low or high or, not a lot of layers too. There are some layers in some of their vocals, but not a lot.
You're right.
But he does bring this element of clean singing on, and I don't know if maybe some of his guitar riffs inspired some of Andre's work too, because I know he plays guitar as well. Okay. I know he just didn't play as much, I don't believe, as like Max played.
Right.
But if you ever notice too, Max would like play a little bit and just kind of fuck off on the vocals while Andres kind of held it down anyway. Yeah. So there was like riffs there when it was important, but not like sometimes he would just be singing and the guitar is just hanging.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how it was when I seen Sepultura, but I seen them with Derrick, and he was the same way. He had a guitar on a few songs. Some songs he would just sing.
Yeah.
So it's just one of those things where I don't know, maybe he had some new riffs too, but the riffs on this thing are badass.
Nice.
So My Global Mind reflected the album's themes, trying them in modern society's resilience on machines and digital control. Rolling Stone Brazil ranked it the 18th best Brazilian album of 2017. Sepultura promoted Machine Messiah with a series of world tours. They supported Creator on their Gods of Violence tour in Europe in early 2017, and joined Testament on their Brotherhood of the Snake tour in U.S. later that year. They also toured Europe in early 2018 with Obscura, Goat Whore, and Fit for an Autopsy, and in Australia in May with Death Angel.
So now they're bopping around the world with some new blood, some young blood. That's pretty cool.
Heavy shit too.
Yeah.
The first official Sepultura documentary, Sepultura Endurance, premiered in May 2017 and was released in June. Notably, Max and Igor Cavalera declined to be interviewed or allow early material to be used. In August 2018 interview at Wacken Open Air, Kisser confirmed that Sepultura had started writing for their 15th studio album, later revealed to be Quadra, released on February 7, 2020. The album, produced by Jens Bogren, is a concept album based on numerology and the quadrivium. It became their most successful record since 1998's Against, charting in 17 countries. Kisser explained the album's concept, emphasizing the 4 sections of 3 songs each, inspired by different phases of the band's sound. The sections include thrash metal, groove, percussion, progressive tracks, and slow-paced melodic songs. He also mentioned the term quadra, which is Portuguese for a sports court, reflecting how everyone grows up in different quadras shaped by rules and definitions. So before we get into this, first song off of this thing, it's called Isolation. It starts off epic as fuck, and then it goes into death metal and metalcore, into some thrash. Like, there's just this epic opening to it. And then he goes into this tapping guitar solo melody, and I just have Andreas was in his bag, because that boy goes off on this album. I'm just like, who the fuck is this? Like, another, like, Machine Messiah, great fucking album, but I don't know, they got even better on this album. I don't know, and I dare say, and you guys may see a future episode where we rank the Sepultura albums, because we talked about that, just to give you a little insight, but I dare say this is my favorite Sepultura album.
I mean, this is one I gave a lot more attention. I listened to, especially leading up to it. Now, I had listened to it prior to the pandemic, or in the middle of the pandemic, if you will, because it was dropped in 2020. And I remember liking it then, thinking, God, fucking Sepultura, like, where have you been? And even though they had been on a roll, I just really felt like Quadra caught my attention then. And then knowing that we were going to do this podcast about them and their career, I was like, oh, I'm going to listen to Quadra again, because I remember liking it. And I listened to it, and I was like, man, this isn't just good, it's really great. Like, it makes me, especially listening to it recently, and doing this, I'm like, I need to listen to some of the previous works leading up to this, just to see, what they were up to, what I missed out on, because this one, man, this was good the whole way. I didn't feel like there was a filler track on it. I mean, they had those like instrumental pieces. One was all acoustic. The title track was just like a 1.5 minute acoustic track. But then they had, I believe it was the Pentagram was the instrumental that was like 4 or 5 minutes, and that was awesome. I listed a few other bangers on there. Track 2, Means to an End. Ali, I think, was track 5. Guardians of the Earth, track 7. Agony of Defeat, Fear, Pain, Chaos, Suffering.
That's the ending track.
Yeah, I mean, just so many good songs. The first track is awesome as well. I mean, it's a great introduction to an album. There's no punches pulled. I just feel like Quadra was something that I feel like, okay, for all the Max fans that quit after Roots and they wrote them off entirely, do like I do and start at what's newest, listen to Quadra, and then start working your way back, and maybe you get to a point where you're like, okay, this is where I could care less, and it doesn't sound heavy anymore. But I think some of that, maybe that early stuff with Derrick Green is closer to Roots, but it's lacking some of that heaviness, that body. Yeah. And then you get to Quadra, and now you've got a really well-rounded sound, harkens back to like KSAD or Arise in a way, but also it has a lot of new modern feel to it. There's a lot of growth there. There's a lot of instrumentation on this album as well. There were production things I noticed. I think it was track 5, Ali, where I felt like, oh, that's just like some studio sound that they came up with. It's very percussive and ambient, and it like repeated a lot throughout that track. And I was like, that's cool that they did that. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't even know what that is. That's new for them, to me. And then they went to the Brazilian / tribal sounding acoustic bits, and I thought that was pretty cool too. Absolutely love this album. It's just gonna be in my top 5 Sepultura albums for sure, and I have to think hard about putting it at 1. I have to listen to the catalog closely like you did to really give it a fair shake versus the early stuff which people are attached to, because we've had the time. Yeah, we've had 30 years since Roots or what have you. Like, it's been a long time. Yeah. To like let that sink in and become a part of your DNA, whereas Quadra has been around for only 4 years now, and plus there was a whole kind of pandemic in the way where they couldn't really support it properly, and now they're going away, which if the guys from Sepultura see this, don't go away. Just don't go away. This is, I mean, I get it, go out on a high note, sure, but maybe just take a break, do some other things musically, and then bring Sepultura back. And you don't got to bring Max and Igor back if it's a problem, if it's going to be conflict. I say just stay with the lineup you've got and keep it going, because what a great album. And if you want to end your career as Sepultura on that album, fair, so be it. But I just think that you're still going strong. Like, just keep going. Like, do the Kiss Motley Crue farewell for 10 years. I don't care, but do another album. I think you guys are. I just think Sepultura, even at this late stage, is still relevant and doing great music. So to me, it's like after all these years, to me, like I said, I'd put this at number 1. I think it appeals to my personal taste more because, like, I'm attached to the old songs, but there's not many albums back. Like, I'll hold a lot of those albums in high regard. But this has progressed in every way, from production to guitar solos to musicianship to, I mean, they didn't just stick with the one thing. They've always evolved. And this is just like the epic peak of what they're able to do. And this even surprised me too. Like, I also got to speak to the vocal diversity as well. Yep. When you say like his vocals had progressed over the years, this album is a great example of just all that Derrick Green can do. And it still has that feeling of Max with the audible fry vocal, but again with some of the clean vocals, and he did reach for some highs in there that jumped out at me. I was like, oh man, I wish he did more of that, like, because that's me. I like those banshee screams and those high pitched vocals, but I think a great testament to his vocal capabilities as well.
So Quadra has become Sepultura's most successful record since 1998, again charting in 17 countries and entering the top 20 in 7 countries, 8 including the UK rock and metal albums chart. It also has become their most successful album in Germany and Switzerland, surpassing the chart positions of their 1996 album Roots, with positions of number 5 and number 13 respectively. Wow. Good art is good art, man.
Yeah, I'm telling you. We're not just
rises to the top.
Yeah, we're not just fanboying over it for no reason. Right. Here's some of the other proof just in the numbers of sales and accolades from other media sources.
So guitarist Andres Kisser explained that the album's concept, Quadrivium, which consists of 4 classical arts: arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy. The term quadrivium is Latin for 4 ways. The concept was developed in discussion with renowned music photographer Marcos Hermes, who also took the cover photo for the album. Based on this concept, the band divided the 12-track album into 4 sections of 3 songs each. The first section features thrash metal songs reflecting on the classic Sepultura sound. The second section is inspired by the group percussion style explored in Roots. The third part contains more progressive songs reminiscent of the track Iceberg Dances from Machine Messiah, but not exclusively instrumental. The fourth section includes a slow-paced and melodic track similar to the song Machine Messiah. With them breaking that up like that, the album still flows great.
Yeah.
And I guess reading that and then had already, I don't want to say reading that because I wrote that, but thinking about that, it's almost like that does happen on the album, but it's not just like the first 3 are thrash songs.
Right.
And the second 3 are Roots inspired. Like there's influences of everything through all of them because there's a great melody and consistency through the whole album. So maybe that was their approach, but I didn't really get that from it myself.
No,
so.
I didn't notice there to be any disjointed parts of this album at all. It flowed very seamlessly for me. I loved it. I didn't think that there was any like chapters to this album. I know that there were a couple instrumentals. I would say that it is a diverse album. So reading that, I mean, it kind of tracks. But I didn't look at it as being divided up into sections. I didn't feel that way about it. But I did appreciate like one track to the next that it sounded good and it also sounded different. Like I was like track 2 does not sound like track 5, does not sound like track 10. So I think that they did a really good job of putting together many good pieces that also happen to flow together very well. A very, very cohesive effort, even if it is divided into sections. I thought it was cohesive.
So in an interview with Brave Words, when asked which Sepultura album he was most proud of, Derrick Green responded, "Definitely Quadra. It's the latest album and we really worked so hard on it. We have so many different elements from the past that have helped us get to here, where we are at right now. So without a doubt in my mind, this is the strongest album that we've done together, and I'm extremely proud of it." And you should be, Derrick.
Yeah.
Quadra received positive reviews from critics. Jay and Modd. Tom Jurek of AllMusic praised the album, stating, "Quadra is Sepultura's first album that actually stand on equal qualitative footing from their classic trilogy. It offers a series of tough, meaty, adventurous songs and that abundantly indulge raw power and emotion. Bogren's production and Sepultura's execution are in perfect balance. Further, Green delivers a new career-defining performance here. It is the first Sepultura album in decades to measure favorably alongside the band's classic output. Dom Lawson of Blabbermouth wrote that Quadra plainly and loudly showcases the sound of a band at the height of their powers, both in terms of creativity and musicianship, calling it one of their finest records yet."
Yeah.
MetalRiot.com named Quadra their #1 album of 2020. Morgan Y. Evans wrote that the album is nothing short of a monument to a lifetime in metal, the determined triumph of a legacy name never saying die and following their trusted vision over popular opinion. Quadra works on every level. In a year filled with so much death, even the band's name vibrates on some heavy karmic level. But isolation especially resonates deeply in a time of so much social upheaval for justice reform. So obviously we're talking about 2020 here. Yeah. The website Collector's Room included Quadra in their list of top 50 Brazilian metal albums of all time. Wow. Metal Hammer named it the 30th best metal album of 2020. Additionally, at the 2020 Metal Storm Awards, Quadra won the award for Best Thrash Metal Album.
Yeah.
So, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, Sepultura could not tour or play any shows to support Quadra for over 2 years after its release. Their first show in this period was at Circo Verdier in Rio de Janeiro on February 12, 2022, to promote Quadra. Band toured the United States with Sacred Reich, Crowbar, and the Art of Shock, and later in Europe with Sacred Reich and Crowbar. These tours had been rescheduled from their original dates in March and April 2020 and the fall of 2021 due to the pandemic. Drummer Bruno Valverde of Angra filled in for Elo Casagrande on the last 3 dates of the U.S. tour, as Casagrande was unable to perform due to a leg injury. Additionally, Gene Patton of Project 46 temporarily replaced guitarist Andre Kisser on summer 2022 European tour due to a family emergency. Kisser's wife Patricia's battle with colon cancer, which sadly led to her passing on July 3rd. That's real sad.
Yeah.
In the spring of 2023, Sepultura co-headlined the Clash of the Titans tour in North America with Creator, supported by Death Angel and Spirit World. Sepultura released quarantine collaboration album Sepultura on August 13, 2021. The album features contributions from members of Megadeth, Testament, Anthrax, System of a Down, Trivium, and Sacred Reich. In a July 2022 interview, frontman Derrick Green confirmed that Sepultura would begin working on their next studio album after the Quadra tour ends, no earlier than 2024. Kisser later indicated that the band was not expected to release another studio album for several years, potentially until at least 2025. With Sepultura set to embark on a farewell tour in 2024 and 2025, deciding against recording another album. Quadra will likely be the band's final studio album. It also is the last album featuring drummer Eloy Casagrande, who is set to depart from the band in 2024.
Yeah, so Eloy has moved on to Slipknot. So good for him. Go out there, get that bag. Let's see what Slipknot sounds like with him behind the kit, if they do, in fact, put out. I think they're set to put out a new album with him on it.
Yeah, I've seen some live stuff with him playing, and he fucking kills it. But
yeah.
I mean, you got to replace Joey and Jay. They're both amazing drummers. So
yeah. So obviously Eloy's the man. He's on top of the world right now. Sepultura has conquered the world with Quadra and decided to hang it up. It's been a long career, going all the way back to 83, 84 when they started. Andreas Kisser's been holding it down since, 87 maybe, was it? Or even earlier than that, I suppose. But
yeah, 80, it was 85.
87, okay. So it's been a long run for these guys. I had probably heard the news of his wife's passing, but I feel like that might be a big factor in things too. Mm-hmm. Like, you can have a whole shift in your life and then say, I no longer wish to do things from prior. You know, like I just want to move on in new ways, and that's fair. I would never hold him to the Sepultura thing if his heart wasn't in it. I think they've had an amazing career. I do personally hate to see him hang it up because like Quadra is so good. I'm like, just keep going. But yeah, if their heart, if it's time, it's time. You know, I mean, 40 years total for the band as a name, Sepultura.
Yeah, you work at the post office for 40 years. You're about done with the fucking post office too. Yeah, you know, so I mean, you're touring the world for 40 years too. So it's a lot of wear and tear, a lot of sleepless nights, a lot of riding around and hurry up and waiting to play every night and shit. So, you know, they've done it, man.
Yeah, they've done the thing for sure. I love them for it.
So, wrapping up here, in August 2023, Kisser boasted that Sepultura would mark their 40th anniversary in 2024 with a special tour. He made it clear, though, that there wouldn't be a Max and Igor Cavalera reunion, opting instead for a commemorative live album. Although right now, I've seen a lot of talks and a lot of these metal sites and stuff that both parties are open to a collaboration again. So we'll see. Maybe they'll do a couple sets. Maybe they'll do something special. But it sounds like maybe they're willing, because it sounded like Max was willing, and it sounded like even after this statement was made that Sepultura is open to a reunion. But at the same time, it does make it kind of weird because we've been playing all these songs for this many years while your asses wasn't here. Yeah. So what, is it necessary? I mean, maybe they came out and do a couple songs.
The readings that I've come across, it was hot and cold. It was like 1 week, yes, open to it on both sides, and then maybe some communication and dialogue occurred and took place, and then it seems like a week later or 2 weeks later, you've got, no, we considered it, but it's not happening. So my last feelings on the matter were, you're not going to see Sepultura with Max and Igor, and that's final. I am not the arbiter of such things. I do not make these things happen. I don't think that it's necessary. Again, a thing that I like to point out to, Max supporters, and the proof is fact, he quit the band. Period. He walked His brother hung out for 10 more years. He walked. These guys left Sepultura, and Andreas and Paulo Jr., they continued with Derrick and a couple of various drummers along the way and kept the thing going. They can't make it work. They can't make it work. You can have Cavalera Conspiracy if you want to see exclusively old Sepultura content, if you want to see what the guys have been up to with Derrick and hear the old songs as well with Derrick on the mic. You can see Sepultura on their farewell tour throughout the year, whatever city they're coming to near you. I don't really have a dog in the fight. For me, when it comes to the separation of the Cavaleras from Sepultura, I prefer Sepultura's music, End of Day, because I gave Soulfly a chance, and I've listened to enough Soulfly over the years to where I'm like, there's just nothing to bite onto. Like, there's just no real substance for me there. I think it kind of goes to show, like, who was, in my opinion, the talent of the band versus, like, the personality of the band. Yeah, there's a lot of identity with Max and the personality and the attitude, and I get that. But then there's Andreas Kisser, who's just a phenomenal musician.
Yeah.
And you see that in Sepultura's body of work post Cavalera, but I don't see any real flash on the guitar from Max. I think he just writes his drop tune riffs and goes along with some of the, the tribal beats that he's become known for. And now he's back with his brother, so there's that Sepultura feeling to it, but you don't get the musical quality, in my opinion, that you'd get with having Andreas Kisser on the guitar.
Yeah, we'll get into that here in just a second as we wrap. So on December 8, 2023, Sepultura dropped the surprise news that they were gearing up for the farewell tour to celebrate their 40th anniversary. That's kind of where we left off.
Yep.
This tour, spanning 18 months, is slated to be their swan song, culminating in a disbandment in 2025, as confirmed by Casa Grande later on. They kicked off the tour at Arena Hall in Belo Horizonte on March 1st, 2024, with Kisser hinting at a possible reunion with former members, blah, 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 for the final gig. Just 3 days before the farewell tour began, news broke that Casa Grande had called it quits on February 6, 2024, to join another project, later revealed to be Slipknot.
Right.
He explained that one of the reasons for leaving Sepultura was his reluctance to hang up his drumsticks at the age of 33. Casa Grande's departure paved the way for former suicidal tendencies drummer Grayson Nekrutman to step in. Nekrutman? Sepultura's musical journey is a melting pot of influences, from heavy metal gods like Queen, Kiss, and Black Sabbath to thrash metal pioneers like Metallica, Slayer, and even punk rock icons like the Ramones and Sex Pistols. Their sound spans across thrash and death metal to groove metal, with forays into hardcore and punk, industrial metal, and even elements of Latin Brazilian music, especially evident in their groundbreaking Roots album. MTV dubbed Sepultura one of the most successful Brazilian heavy metal band ever and a pivotal force in 90s metal. Their impact can be felt in bands like Slipknot, Korn, and Gojira, who cite them as a major influence. Current members include Paulo Jr. on bass and backing vocals since 1984, Andreas Kisser on lead guitar and backing vocals since 1987, Derrick Green on lead vocals since 1997, and now Grayson Nekrutman on drums and percussion from 2024 onwards. And I would like to end this the same way the way Sepultura started with Max Cavalera. I wanted to make sure if you were a fan of Max, I gave you a little rundown on what Max has been doing in the meantime, because we talked about this history of Sepultura.
Yeah.
I think it'd only be fair just to touch a little bit on the fact that Sepultura continued, but Max did as well, and you kind of alluded that to a little bit.
Yeah.
So just kind of a little what Max has been up to. So he plays in several heavy metal bands, including Soulfly, which is kind of his band. To this date, they have released 12 studio albums, 1 tour EP, 23 singles, 1 video album, and 12 music videos. Their debut album, Soulfly, was released on April 21st, 1998, and their most recent album, Totem, was released on August 5th, 2022. So I went back. I just kind of cycled through some Soulfly.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it was just kind of like where Roots kind of left off in a way, but not as intense. You listen to some of the newer stuff as I was skimming through, back to just kind of like a lot of thrash metal going on there. It was kind of like he's sticking to his guns and he does what he does. Take it or leave it. I was never been a big Soulfly fan. I've seen him a couple times, but I also like, hey, more power to you. You do your thing. A lot of people gravitated towards it because, I mean, after fucking 12 studio albums and all that other stuff that I just said, he had an illustrious career after that. You got Cavalera Conspiracy, which I'm going to go into a little bit about them. Killer Be Killed he's in.
Yep.
Fucking love Killer Be Killed.
Yeah.
One of the best super groups ever. Great. That has a lot to do with everybody else, but Max, I'm sure, contributes in there, and it's great. And he's got 2 LPs with Go Ahead and Die. And Go Ahead and Die is a project with his son Igor. And
his son is named after his brother?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I'll get into a little bit more here. So since 1992, Cavalera has resided in Phoenix, Arizona with his wife Gloria and their 5 children. 3 of his sons are involved in music as also. Richie fronts in Sight, while Igor and Zion perform in Lodi Kong. In 2012 and 2013, Zion toured with Soulfly following David Kincaid's retirement and is now a regular member as the drummer. So Igor briefly filled in as bassist in Soulfly in 2015 after Tony Capos left the band, and later toured as keyboardist and co-vocalist during Soulfly's Point Blank tour. So I'll go into this a little bit here. So I'll clear this up a little bit. Cavalera appeared in The Mummy Returns as an off-camera role as a Scorpion King, providing the guttural screams for Dwayne Johnson. I didn't know that.
That's cool.
So Max continued on. So I want to go into a little bit of the Cavalera Conspiracy here. I have a little paragraph about it, and then we'll wrap this biatch up.
All right.
So in July 2006, while Soulfly was on tour, Max received a call from his brother. By the end of the conversation, Max invited Igor to visit him in Phoenix for the 10th anniversary of D-Lo, an annual memorial show for Dana.
Mm-hmm.
That was his stepson that passed away.
Yeah.
At the concert, Igor joined Soulfly to perform 2 Sepultura songs, Roots, Bloody Roots, and Attitude, and later of which Dana had written the lyrics for.
Okay.
So Dana actually wrote the lyrics for Attitude.
That's interesting. That's cool.
In an interview with Chad Bauer of About.com, Max stated that this performance marked the birth of the Cavalera Conspiracy. After the show, Max suggested they start a new project once Soulfly finished touring. Max admitted to Bauer that he had lied to Igor about having all the songs ready, having completed only one, but called it one of those good lies. He added, what I like about the conspiracy is that nothing is really planned. One thing leads to another. There's no pressure, and it feels like a different project than anything I've done. Before speaking with his brother, Max had written a song called Inflicted, inspired by Sepultura's 1992 visit to Indonesia, where they witnessed a crazy ritual involving self-inflicted pain, knives, blood, and fire. Max initially intended for Inflicted to be part of Soulfly's 6th studio album, Conquer, but decided he wanted to create the song with Igor. Due to legal reasons, they couldn't use Inflicted as a band's name. Max suggested Cavalera Conspiracy, which Igor liked, and Max added, I think I like it better than Inflicted. It has a ring to it and connects me and Igor as 2 brothers back together. And the band has put out 4 LPs and redid Morbid Visions, Schizophrenia, and Bestial Visions. So that's where that lies. I just wanted to give a little wrap up of what Max has been doing. I thought it would be only fair just to kind of come back around. And, you know, as far as Sepultura goes, man, great music throughout the years. They've had an awesome way, almost all the way from the beginning, to break that music up and not just have it all the way just thrash or all the way just death metal. And I think that's one of the things that's always kept them going and set them apart, with the willingness to create different styles of music, the willingness to be inspired and incorporate other tribes' music or other instruments that you've never heard, or backing tracks or new production techniques. I think they've stayed true to who they were this whole time, but also were able to incorporate elements to set them apart. And man, what a fucking awesome band. What a great discography. What a fucking body of work that these guys put out, man. You know, and I praise Max too. Like I'm not a Max hater. Sure. I don't, there's stuff that he's done that I like. I'm actually a Max fan, to be honest. Soulfly isn't for me, but I listened to some of this Cavalera Conspiracy stuff, and it was pretty good. But it just kind of reminded me of like very, very old Sepultura, just produced really well.
Right.
And I went back and I kind of did some contrast between the re-recordings of Morbid Visions and Bestial Visions compared to the old stuff. The old stuff was almost hard unlistenable, like in that black metal category, because they had the old singer on it too, so it was just very, very like, like kind of wow, what the hell. But you listen to the new stuff and it sounds pretty damn good because it's got good production and it's like really in your face. So if you really wanted to listen to Morbid Visions, Schizophrenia, and Bestial Visions, which Morbid Visions is part of the Bestial Visions, but I would listen to Cavalera Conspiracy stuff because you'd be able to get that idea out a lot better. I mean, yeah, it is Tuka, it's thrash, it's a lot of that. And that Go Ahead and Die stuff, a lot of thrash. So Max just is a big fucking thrash guy, man. He's still playing a lot of that stuff now because, like I said, even if you listen to new Soulfly stuff. But yeah, man, that puts my stamp on it. Sepultura discography. You got Morbid Visions, Schizophrenia, Beneath the Remains, Arise, KSAD, Roots Against Nation, Roarback, Dante 21, Alex, Kairos, The Mediator Between Head and Hands, Must Be the Heart, Machine Messiah, and ending with Quadra in 2020. So
15 studio albums, all said and done.
Yep, that's what I got to say about Sepultura. So
yeah, I mean, good work. Props for listening to the entire discography and some by diving into the Soulfly, Cavalera Conspiracy, and also, I'm sorry, what did you say? What was the other band? Not Kill or Be Killed, but
Go Ahead and Die.
Yeah, there you go. Yep. I mean, that's just a lot of music to consume. How long did it take? A couple weeks? Month? 2 months to listen to all of it?
Yeah, it took me a while because I wanted to get this right and I wanted to do justice to Sepultura.
Sure.
I wanted to make sure it was proofread as best as I could. There were still some parts that I didn't get, but it took a while, and that was why I kind of pushed this off a little bit, because I did want to listen to all the music, but it's different if you have 5 CDs compared to fucking 15 plus all this extra EPs and all this stuff. And like, I didn't know what Revolution Songs was, so I put that on one day and listened to that whole thing, and I was like, well, it's kind of wasting my time a little bit because I didn't care for it, but at least I can say I listened to it. So yeah, this has been a long time coming, and I'm hoping we can get some bios coming to you guys a little sooner because I know you guys enjoy these. So I'm going to probably start working on a new one, but hopefully there won't be such a long gap between the ones that we've done. Like, I think this is like 2-month gap, but one a month would be nice, but if it's just one every 2 months, I at least want to make sure it's right, you know?
Yeah.
So it was a lot of work, you know? So I hope people enjoy this. I hope they listen to it. I hope because the Morbid Angel one was received really well. So, and I love kind of doing this research and, you know, putting something together that kind of accumulates the music that I've been listening to for years, and it teaches me a lot too. So
it's also nice to fill in the gaps of some of the bands like Morbid Angel or Sepultura, as we've discussed, where you haven't listened to every single thing, but now you go back and you want to make sure, all right, I can say I've listened to the whole catalog front to back, note for note, heard it all, and I can speak to it, and can't come for me now. But it is nice to revisit, see where they came from, see where they are now, see that they've withstood the test of time, and see that they've still done relevant music, especially with the last 2 releases being like critically acclaimed. And also having myself personally listening to Quadra several times, I was like, yeah, I mean, they shouldn't hang it up, but I respect if they do. 40 years is a long time to be a band, and that anybody's ready to retire from anything after 4 years, so that's fair game. But yeah, it's been fun revisiting the Sepultura catalog. You know, I'm looking forward to the next bio, honestly, already, to whatever we'll discuss off camera what that's going to be. You know, there's a lot of names that are very historic that we could do, and we could even look at some bands that are maybe newer but still have a body of work to highlight. So there's a lot of options here. I hope people dig the bios, and if you have anything to add to it, you know, like definitely drop it in the comments.
Yeah, for sure.
Let us know if we missed something or some facts, some trivia. You know, just go ahead and hit us up with it, because definitely here to learn and share that sort of thing.
And we could have probably jammed this into one. We did 1 3-hour Morbid Angel episode, basically.
And they loved it.
Yeah. And then we split this into 2. So I guess let us know if you guys would rather have the whole story or we split it into 2. Obviously, that's 2 weeks worth of content for us. So it works a little better for us. It's not as exhaustive, but as you can tell, we're wearing the same clothes as the other one, so we did it all in one day.
Yeah.
But yeah, with that being said, man, that was really cool. I was hoping I could fill in some gaps for some people, because sometimes you hear, well, this guy joined the band, but you don't know much about this guy.
Right.
It's just as simple as Derrick Green joined the band from Cleveland.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, then what? And then he's just in Sepultura. Like, I try to put a little highlight on some of these guys, explain what happened with the departures and all that. So we could fill in the gaps a little bit and just talk about this a little. You know, I hope I did it justice. But
yeah, I didn't know that Derrick Green wasn't from Brazil. I thought they picked him up from where they're from. I didn't know he was from Cleveland. So I learned that. I learned about some passings that I didn't know about some personal life matter from the band members. So definitely had some cool stuff in there for me to learn, and I'm excited to put a few of these more recent albums. I think I want to jump in from Alex, maybe Dante, and then just kind of spin them in a playlist and see what songs have been
what grabs you.
Yeah, the most played on Spotify or what have you, and just kind of get into it a little bit more.
Hell yeah. Well, with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed that. Like, share, subscribe, all that stuff. That helps us out a lot. Still trying to grow this thing, and we are growing, and we're growing slowly, but that's the best way to grow. So, all right. Much love to you guys. Keep it metal. Peace.